AJ joining us apparently from his gym.
Yes, yeah, here in Ashburn, yes.
Very nice, very nice. I'm going to want a complete tour, but we should probably not do that on a radio program. We'll have to do that another time. That's a different podcast. All right, so the NFL Finance Committee is meeting today. That is when we expected a pretty significant step in the Josh Harris, Dan Snyder negotiations. In fact, we expected perhaps a approval to be sent to the full ownership group for a couple weeks in Minneapolis. That was what we were hoping. What are we now hoping to get with all of the other reporting that's come out about this?
Yeah, no, it's not. I haven't got a lot today so far. Hopefully, I have something soon. But yeah, this should be one of the last steps towards a vote, because usually the recommendation from the finance committee is done at this point, and then they set a date, and the date would be May 22nd or May 23rd for the meetings that are going to be happening outside of somewhere in Minnesota, outside the MSP area. So but right now we just really haven't had any concrete, and it's kind of hard for us. I couldn't go into those meetings, or the NFL headquarters. I can't really sneak in there. So I'm just using kind of texting around to see what people know. And right now there's really not much out yet. So we're hoping to get something in the next couple hours.
So one of the things that was interesting from the Athletics report is Snyder still has not signed this deal. Like, there's an agreement, but not a signed deal. And Harris has unilaterally sent this to the league. Why is that so bizarre, and what does it mean?
It looks like Snyder, it means, from my sources, is Roger Goodell has kind of been championing this process. This does not following the usual process. It's not like what we saw for the Broncos or the Panthers before that. Those really follow the NFL bylaws. This is not. So it looks like usually they had to get this far in the process. The application has to be in, and the application only goes when a winning bidder is selected. We don't have that. So this progress is kind of gone. It's like the application is in, but it's not. But all the vetting looks like it's been pretty much done by this point. And even we have up to 17 limited partners. So that's 18 total people. And that's going to be criminal background checks. That's going to be financial checks, make sure they have the money and everything else. That is a lot. That's a lot to go through. And it should take several weeks. So to get to this point where there could be a vote, it means, this process has kind of gone on in the background for many, many weeks.
AJ Perez, Front Office Sports, with us here on the Hoffman Show, the Team 980, the always free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@the-team980. So just to be clear, before I get any further and give anyone a heart attack, there's no anticipation at this point that this isn't going to go through, right? It's just, it's hey, how do we get around this obstacle course? Not, hey, do we need to quit this obstacle course?
Exactly. Yeah, there's really no indications that Dan Snyder, there are indications that, that the other owners and maybe even Roger Goodell, they've championed this process because Dan wasn't moving fast enough. There was that is a very serious possibility, that from one source, but it's kind of like, this should not be going like this. Dan should have picked somebody by now. There's only one person to pick. All the other fake money out there, from Brian Davis to Apostolopoulos to everybody else who wanted in, even Fertitta and Bezos. This is all, the only real bid has been Josh Harris, and it's been for many, probably a couple months now at least. And everybody knows that. But Dan Snyder, I don't know. It's hard for me to talk about whether there's some kind of legal agreement, identification, kind of like that, because my sources aren't saying that that's the issue. But there's something holding this up, and that one thing could be the Mary Jo White report, and when that's going to be released. I'm hearing that may not be released for many more months, actually, even when Josh Harris is expected to take over the team in June.
Wow, that honestly wouldn't be surprising at this point. Just he's got to be out, because I don't think they want to do anything to threaten the process. One line that I did think was super interesting from the Athletics reporting, though, was there was a line that says Snyder wants to sell. Right? We've been told this whole time, and certainly at the beginning of this process, like, Dan was dragged into this kicking and screaming. He did, like, his whole identity was being the owner of the team. He did not want to sell. At this point, he's over it. There was a report, it might have been you actually, who had about, like, when Tanya got booed, that was a pretty big deal. And that, changed the dynamic. So whatever has gotten us to this point, it's apparent that Dan wants to sell. But the way you're phrasing it, AJ, I think is interesting because it's almost like he doesn't want to sell to Harris, or like doesn't quite have everything that he wants. Could that just be the legal stuff, or like what are the other options on the table for why they haven't signed a more binding agreement yet? And it's something that Dan hasn't done versus, hey, I'll sign it. You guys just need to figure out the details on the legal side, which is what essentially the finance committee is doing right now.
Yeah, the one thing I told about today's meeting, there are a lot of lawyers involved in it. I couldn't verify that there's a presentation, but lawyers for both sides, for the Commanders, for Snyder on one side, the lawyers for Harris as well, and along with Jeff Pash and the other lawyers for the NFL. They're all involved in this. This is like this is why probably we're not getting a lot of news out of it. This is very, very legalese, a lot of just like kind of getting the details out. And the details do matter. And the details could be holding it up. It's some of the, whether it's Mary Jo White report, whether it's who pays what, if the sale happens, if the sale closes, it's like middle of June, and then there's some fines coming along from any of these investigation, who pays what. That's not identification. That's just kind of more of like, it happens here, you pay this, happens there, you pay that.
Right.
So that it's not going to be a blanket, Josh Harris is not going to want to start this franchise having to have Dan Snyder to pay for it's not good PR, and having to pay for anything that happened while Snyder was the owner. There's no appetite for that. And there's appetite for the NFL for having Harris to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why the report from that's why one of the reasons why it may not be released for many more months is because that report could kind of curtail the whole like, oh, we have a new owner, a new era, and blah blah blah, and then this comes out right after, and we're talking about Dan Snyder again. So that's like part of it. I think there's a lot of things going on. A lot of it's for PR, but a lot of this right now is just little things that have to get solved. And we're talking about over $6 billion. There's a lot of things, especially if there was a report that that Harris would pay a little under $5.8 billion now, and then come up with the rest in a couple of years. There's so many things like that. Those are little details that can bog down a process.
Right. So AJ Perez, Front Office Sports, is with us. And that was the last thing I wanted to ask you about pursuant to this, at least that I can think of. Sometimes I say that, AJ, and then 4 more questions come to mind. So buckle up. Who knows how long we're here. But specifically that $5.8 billion number, because we'd heard like some people were reporting 5.8, some people were reporting 6.05. 6.05 number seems to have won out. But apparently part of this is Dan might actually loan Josh Harris some money up front. How does that work? Because I've heard multiple theories on that. One is that some of that money could be fine, whatever, dependent. That hey, we're gonna play 5.8 up front, but if you we accrue fines, like we're gonna subtract that from your allowance basically, and then at X date we'll pay the rest. Also, it would make sense on just a pure financial level. Like this team is going to be set up to make more money the second Dan's gone. So, hey, let us make some money and then we'll pay you. So what have you heard as to why that might be allowed? And then also, what are kind of the larger, and then actually, tell you what, let me stop the question there, and then we'll get to some of the larger, bigger dynamics at play as franchise prices continue to rise and why this might be a sign of things to come in the future. So specific 5.8 number.
Yeah, that's one theory.
Now.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one theory. I mean, you have $200 million or so to play with. Whether it and if that's a lot of money. I don't think anything, and expects the fines to be that high unless the federal investigation comes back and nails some huge ass number to it. So it's going to be. It's pretty much that is a good theory because he has 17 limited partners. He has many billionaires in this club. He can afford to pay the 6.05 now. So I think that could be more on Josh Harris's side. Say maybe we're going to hold this back a little bit.
Yeah. So. And that's the other thing too. I'm surprised that there are any financing holes because good God, this group is going to wind up worth like $30-40 billion potentially by the time it's done in all of their net worth. I mean, Schmidt's worth 18 on his own. The family from South America that just joined the bid. I realize that's a complicating thing now too, by the way, for the background checks. Once you get international bidders, that becomes harder to do. But their family net worth is 12.
He was born in Yeah, he was born in New York, so it's not a big deal there. But yeah.
Okay, that helps. I know I saw one line in a story somewhere that there are international bidders, though somewhere else in the group. So maybe it's one of the other 12 people that haven't been identified yet. Point is,
Yeah.
their net worth is very large. It is kind of surprising that there are these financial things that have to be figured out. But I think it does go to show, AJ, the complexity of the NFL's rules here. Is this the first of what sales are going to look like, or perhaps a sale that is caught in the middle ground between Tepper and the Walton family being able to pay cash as the last two to ever just buy a team because they got the money to do so, and the rising franchise values and the fact that they are running out of people to buy franchises? Like, are there going to have to be bigger rule changes in general? And is this actually not that specific to Josh Harris and Dan Snyder and all the complicating factors that are, present and maybe not impacting it as much as we think?
Yeah, the NFL has been hesitant with private equity so far, but look, two of the last three owners, we got Harris, we had Tepper, private equity guys. So it's pretty much, we already have private equity in the NFL. That's the first step. Before they change that 30% cash rule, or 30% liquidity needed as part of a purchase, I think they're going to look into what every other league pretty much has done in the U.S. and allow limited partner investment by private equity. That would allow not only for new sales, but it also allows the current owners and co-owners around the league to cash out. Because you have all these high valuations. That's great. How do you access that? We saw that with the co-owners having a fight there. They ended up getting almost $1 billion for 30%. Now look at what 30% is worth right now of this team. That's half. It's like less than half. This whole sale.
Right.
It's so there's things that need to be fixed around the NFL, but there's really this is going to go like this going forward. You're going to need 17, 18, 20 partners. You got up to 25 people in partner, or one controlling owner and 24 others. We're going to see larger ownership groups if that rule's not changed. And these sales are going to take longer and longer. And you're already, with that 30% rule, it's pretty much, it's so prohibitive. It's not like guys like Brian Davis who can't afford it. It's a lot of people who have a lot of money, who actually have billions of dollars to be able to come in, and they have to want to own an NFL team. And that's a very small group.
Right. Bezos might be able to buy the Seahawks when they're up, but like after that, you're running out of rich dudes real fast. And not to mention, there's other things that you and others.
Yeah, that was the first thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that the NFL wants to diversify its ownership group, right? And so if you want to get black owners, you want to get female owners, you want to get Asian owners, you want to get European owners, South American, but not just as part of groups, but as majority owners, you need to widen the base because unfortunately, due to a lot of factors that we're not going to talk about right now on this particular radio show, the top 1% of the 1% is white men. And if the NFL actually is serious about that, there's going to have to be other rules that are changed. One, because you're even running out of white dudes, but you're certainly limiting the potential ownership pool for the future. AJ Perez, Front Office Sports, with us. Make sure you read his work, frontofficesports.co. AJ, thank you, sir. Appreciate it, and we will talk to you. Who knows? Maybe we'll talk to you in an hour when you got more stuff from the owners' meetings. Probably not, but we look forward to reading your reporting then. We'll let you actually do your day job. See you, buddy.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.